Picture yourself walking into a chaotic, crowded room. The music is loud, a dozen conversations are overlapping, and sensory input is dialed up to 10. In this high-pressure environment, do you instinctively jump right into the mix, or do you physically feel the need to pause and hang back? If you choose to pause, you've probably been told that you're shy, hesitant, or lacking social skills. Society treats that hesitation as a behavioral deficit that needs to be fixed. But that assumption completely ignores the biology of what is actually happening inside your head. We are going to run through 4 specific behavioral tests. Keep track of how many of these apply to you, because if you check the boxes on these scenarios, you don't have a personality flaw. You are operating on a completely distinct, measurable neurological system. Question number 1. After a couple of hours of socializing, do you feel physically exhausted to the point where you need solitary focus to get your energy back? Psychologists have recognized this specific energy drain for a century. In the 1920s, Carl Jung established the introvert-extrovert spectrum based entirely on how different people replenish their internal batteries. This animated diagram explains exactly why that happens. On the extrovert side, the brain's reward network runs on dopamine and links directly to the sympathetic nervous system, the network responsible for our fight or flight response. When extroverts enter a busy social event, dopamine floods their system, making them alert, talkative, and highly energized. Introverts have the exact same amount of dopamine, but their receptors are highly sensitive to it. A busy room overstimulates them almost instantly. So instead, as we see on the other side of this diagram, their brains rely on acetylcholine. This neurotransmitter powers the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest network. It requires a calm environment to trigger deep focus and a sense of well-being. That exhaustion you feel after a party is a strict biological demand from your acetylcholine system, requiring a physical recharge. Question 2. Are you frequently accused of overthinking or taking too long to answer a simple question? Neuroscientists using PET scans to measure cerebral blood flow have found that this delay is literal. Your blood is physically traveling a longer distance inside your skull. Look at this top-down brain map. When an extrovert hears a question, the sensory input takes a short, direct line through the posterior thalamus to the temporal lobes. They process the immediate sensory data and speak almost instantly. Now track the introverted pathway. The input takes a long detour through the frontostriatothalamic circuit. Before a single word is spoken, the signal must pass through the right front insular cortex to check for empathy, the prefrontal cortex to process abstract thought, and the left hippocampus to search long-term memory. Those conversational pauses are the sound of your brain taking the necessary time to build logical coherence and empathy into your response. Test number 3. Do you automatically notice subtle emotional shifts or tensions in a room that everyone else seems to ignore? Approximately 20% of the population has a biological trait called sensory processing sensitivity. Their central nervous system is highly reactive to both positive and negative environmental stimuli, meaning they absorb details that bypass other people entirely. Because the quiet brain naturally pauses, it allows the mirror neuron networks, the cells that understand the intentions of others, to fire and connect without interruption. When you aren't fighting to plan your next sentence, you drop your cognitive load. You hear the actual vocal inflections and perceive the underlying emotional states of the person speaking to you. This is the mechanical reality of active listening. You suspend your own ego to capture exact meaning, which creates a massive neurological advantage in leadership and conflict resolution. The final test. Are you highly immune to peer pressure? Do you refuse to do things just because everyone else is doing them? To understand why, we have to look at a concept developed by psychologist Carl Rogers called the locus of evaluation. It dictates whether you measure your self-worth using an external metric, like the approval of others, or an internal one. Quiet brains naturally skew toward an internal locus of control. They believe their own actions determine their outcomes. Because they don't require external validation to feel secure, they are statistically highly resistant to groupthink and blind obedience to authority. We can see the extreme limits of this trait in historical data. Studies of individuals who actively resisted destructive authority figures during World War II show that the rescuers possessed exceptionally high internal loci of control. By relying on an internal moral compass, these individuals completely bypass the normative social influence that demands conformity for survival, even under imaginable pressure. A quiet exterior often masks a profound, scientifically proven psychological resistance to conformity. So, tally up your score. If you recognized yourself in these 4 tests, your brain is highly optimized for deep processing, active empathy, and independent thought. Your physical exhaustion after a loud event is just acetylcholine doing its job. Those long conversational pauses are just your frontal lobes executing complex routing. And if you are an extrovert, take note. When your quiet colleague pauses before answering, do not interrupt them. Their brain is utilizing a complex pathway to yield a superior, highly considered answer. It is time to stop fighting your biological wiring and start leveraging the quiet brain as the powerful operating system it was built to be.